Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and this is my Jane Austen Retellings ranking video. I've spent a lot of time working on this video, and as it turns out, I have 32 retellings that I need to rank, and it was not easy. I don't find ranking things all that easy. If someone asks me what my favorite of something is, it's hard for me to say, especially with books, but I'm gonna give it a whirl. But first, there's a couple things I need to share with you of a celebratory nature. First of all, I woke up this morning to discover that I have 1,000 subscribers. So thank you so much, everybody. That is honestly astounding to me. And I just want to say a big thank you to those of you who subscribe, because I genuinely really love interacting with you in the comment section. I really love talking about books with you and getting your opinions and your recommendations. And so this has been so much fun. So thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed to me. The second thing that is worthy of celebration is that I am finished my treatment. I am finished my cancer treatment. I have been through the last 6 months, I've been taking oral chemo, I've been doing chemo pills, and yesterday evening I took the last of my pills, and I'm going to insert a picture here. We took a picture of me with my last pills, so that is definitely worthy of celebration. And I want to also thank you guys so much. You have been so supportive and so kind and generous and encouraging, and I really do appreciate it. It really helped through. It was such a long process, but I'm done, and so I'm so excited. Okay, let's dive right into these rankings. I'm not going to be able to talk very much about these books because, like I said, there are 32 to rank. Before I do that, though, I think I need to briefly say what it is that I'm including here, because there are, you know, there's many different ways that you could do a retelling. So I am including everything in this. I am including sequels, reimaginings, fan fiction, mixed sequels, recreations, adaptations, retellings, prequels, continuations, whatever you want to call them. If it's related at all to Jane Austen and her books, I'm counting it as the retelling for this ranking. All right, so let's start. I am going to start at the bottom, and you're going to have to wait to find out what my absolute favorite Jane Austen retelling is. Okay, so at number 32, we have Eliza's Daughter by Joan Aiken. In this sequel to Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, Joan Aiken tells the story of Eliza, Colonel Brandon's ward, Eliza's daughter, Liz. I really didn't like what she did to the characters from Sense and Sensibility, to their personalities, to their futures. I found this book very disappointing. 31 is Eligible, a modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice by Curtis Sittenfield. This is part of the Austen project that they did a few years ago, where they did modern retellings of all of Jane Austen's main 6 books. This is set in the United States. I remember absolutely nothing about this. There is actually a very good chance that I DNF'd this book, but I'm putting it on here anyway because it was on my list. It could have been from before the days when I figured out how to create a dedicated DNF shelf on Goodreads, and before that, if I DNF'd a book, I think I gave it 1 star. I think that was my the way that I did things. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I didn't like it. 30 is Possibilities, a contemporary retelling of Persuasion by Debra White-Smith. This one was also set in the United States, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work as a modern retelling. I didn't like that one either. Number 29 is Sense and Sensibility by Joanna Trollope. This is another one of the Austen project. It did not work to tell this story in a modern setting. I felt people's actions and motivations were just not believable, and I also did not like the characters. This one just did not work. Coming in at number 28, and this might be a surprise to people, and I know that this is an unpopular opinion, but it's Longbourn by Jo Baker. This is Pride and Prejudice from the servant's perspective, and I was really excited. I thought that was a great idea, but again, this one, it just didn't work for me. Coming in at number 27 is Emma Watson by Joan Aiken. In this book, she finishes the manuscript left by Jane Austen, and it had so much potential, but it was just meh for me. Coming in at number 26 is Definitely Not Mr. Darcy by Karen Doornebos. Sorry, I'm sure I'm butchering that last name. American Chloe auditions for what she thinks is a Jane Austen inspired documentary, but turns out to be a Regency era dating show. This one was a fun read. It was a romance, and I don't really read a lot of romances, which is why it's at this point on the list. But you will be interested to hear that already at number 26, these are books that I liked, I just didn't love. So, I mean, you have to rank them if you're going to rank them, and you've got 32 books. So the first 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, the first 4 or 5 were books that I actively disliked, but now we're getting into books that I liked but didn't love. All right, so number 25 is Lady Catherine's Necklace by Joan Aiken. Joan Aiken has also done retellings or sequels to all of Jane Austen's main novels, and it's interesting, you'll discover here I'm really up and down about these. It's not consistent, but Lady Catherine's Necklace comes in at number 25. This is a sequel to Pride and Prejudice, tells the story of what happens one April day when a sudden blizzard disrupts the weather, causes a carriage accident, and affects the lives of all those involved in a most amazing way. Number 24 is Emma by Alexander McCall Smith. I expected to like this more than I did because I really do enjoy Alexander McCall Smith. This is again an Austen project, and so it's a modern day Emma, and again I just didn't feel like it worked in a modern day setting, at least the way it was told. Coming in at number 23 is Pride and Prejudice and Zombies by Seth Grahame-Smith. This was utterly ridiculous and completely silly, and yet very entertaining. What can I say? Coming in at 22 is Unmarriageable by Soniah Kamal. This is Pride and Prejudice in modern day Pakistan. And this was interesting. I've discovered that modern day retellings work better for me in other cultures than the UK and the States and Canada. I don't know why that is, but this worked better as a modern day retelling, and it was interesting. 21, Murder on the Bride's Side by Tracy Kiely. This is a mystery set in the US. This is the second book in the series, and it's a play off of Sensibility. I love when you can make connections to Jane Austen, specific or non-specific, in a mystery. That just works for me, and so yeah, this is a series that I enjoy. Now, this one is one that I read a very long time ago, and I'm actually just about to reread it. So any of them that are, I've just recently reread the first 2, and I think that I based this retelling on the star ratings that I gave in Goodreads. And when I first entered books into Goodreads, if I hadn't read them for a while, or I couldn't remember, but I know that in general I liked them, then I just gave everything a 3. So this could actually end up being higher on this list once I do a reread of it, but at this point it's sitting at number 21. At 20 is Murder Most Persuasive by the same author. Again, this is a mystery set in the US. This one is the 3rd in the series, and this one is a play off of Persuasion. Now, these ones aren't direct modern day retellings. They're just the main character loves Jane Austen, often quotes Jane Austen, which I love. And there's just elements to the plot that kind of resemble, in this case, Persuasion. And then coming in at number 19 is Murder Most Austen, again by the same author. This is the 4th in the series, and in this one our main character Elizabeth heads to Bath for a Jane Austen festival. Super fun. Number 18 is the Jane Austen Society by Natalie Jenner. This is set in Chawton after World War II, where they create the society and try to preserve some of Jane Austen's memory and memorabilia, etc. Coming in at number 17 is Bridget Jones' Diary by Helen Fielding. This is a year in the life of Singleton Bridget Jones. I love it. It's been a long time since I've read it though, so I know the movie better, so I need to do a reread of the book and see what I think, because it's been a very long time. Coming in at 16 is Austenland by Shannon Hale. New Yorker Jane Hayes is a massive Janeite, and she heads to England for the ultimate Jane Austen experience in Austenland, and it was just fun. It was just fun, and this is the book that the movie is made up from, Austenland. Coming in at 15 is Midnight in Austenland by the same author. Charlotte Kinder, different main character, heads to Austenland. I liked this one better than the first one because along with all the Austen love, there was gothic and mystery elements in it as well, which you know I love. Okay, coming in at number 14 is Murder Most Pemberley by Jessica Berg. This was a book that I read, I had an e-arc for, an advanced reader copy, and it was just fun. So imagine a world where Jane Austen's characters are real. Eliza Darcy travels to England for a family reunion at Pemberley. The house is full of family members she has never met before because of an estrangement between her father and her uncle, the current master of Pemberley. When a body is found floating in the fountain, Eliza has another mystery to solve. I was so excited about this concept of Jane Austen's characters being real, and then Agatha Christie was mentioned in the first paragraph, and I was hooked. This was a really fun mystery. The characters were great, especially Great Aunt Iris. And I loved seeing all of the Austen names in the novel. Darcy, Bennet, Tilney, Knightley, Wentworth, Willoughby, Wickham, etc. It was so fun. Coming in at number 13, it's 3 books, but it's a trilogy, and it's more like The Lord of the Rings. It's 3 volumes. That tells one story, so I'm counting it as one. And this is An Assembly Such as This, Duty and Desire, and These Three Remain by Pamela Aiken. This is a trilogy retelling the events of Pride and Prejudice through the eyes of Darcy. It was very well written, the language was right, the characters were as expected from the original, and the story was really interesting. I really liked the exploration of the friendship between Darcy and Bingley. The second book in the trilogy covers the events in Pride and Prejudice where Darcy is off stage. Therefore, we get a new story in Duty and Desire, and I liked it. This book had a bit of mystery and felt very gothic. And so all in all, it was a great trilogy. All 3 had a great sense of time and place. The descriptions of clothes and games, France, Beau Brummel, mentions of the Regent. I really felt like I was in that world. And I especially liked the accounts of Darcy's friendships with Bingley, Brom, Colonel Fitzwilliam, and even Fletcher, his valet. So that one's definitely worth a read. They're very short, so all 3 of them together isn't too much, to feel daunted. Coming in at number 12 is Murder at Longbourn by Tracy Kiely. This is part of that Elizabeth Parker series. This one is the first in the series and was just super fun. I just recently reread this one, which is probably why it's higher up on the list. It's just fun. She quotes Jane Austen. You can see elements of Pride and Prejudice in the story, and it was just a fun mystery. Coming in at number 11 is Death Comes to Pemberley by P.D. James. 6 years after the events of Pride and Prejudice, preparations are underway for the annual autumn ball, and then murder happens on the estate. Again, really fun. P.D. James is a phenomenal writer, and this was just a really fun Austen retelling with some mystery involved. Coming in at number 10 is The Suspicion at Sanditon by Carrie Beebris, or The Disappearance of Lady Denham. This is number 7 in the Mr. and Mrs. Darcy mystery series. I read this one a long time ago, so who knows, on a reread it might appear higher in the list. But I love that she included Sanditon in her series. So she's written 7 books. So she's got 1 book for each of the main 6 novels, and then she included Sanditon, and I love that because I really like Sanditon. Coming in at number 9 is Suspense and Sensibility by Carrie Beaveris, or First Impressions Revisited. And this is the second one in the series. Obviously, this one is connected to Sense and Sensibility. Coming in at number 8 is Jane Fairfax by Joan Aiken. This is a retelling of Emma, but focusing on Jane Fairfax. And this is one of Joan Aiken's that I really did like. I really liked learning more about Jane Fairfax and getting the story of Emma through Jane Fairfax's eyes. Yeah, that was really good. Coming in at number 7 is Mansfield Revisited by Joan Aiken. In this sequel to Mansfield Park, Joan Aiken stayed true to the world and characters created by Jane Austen while telling her own story. Mansfield Revisited takes place 4 years after the events of Mansfield Park, and the main character is Susan Price. That's Fanny's little sister who comes to Mansfield Park at the end of the story. The book opens with the death of Sir Thomas, and this was a brilliant move by Aiken as it removes Edmund and Fanny and forces Tom to settle down and accept his new responsibilities. I think writing a sequel to Jane Austen is a daunting prospect, and so therefore it was a smart move to send Edmund and Fanny to Antigua to wrap up business, because those were the 2 main characters. So get them out of the way and you can tell a story without people being distracted by what they thought you should have done with those 2 main characters. Mansfield Revisited is the first of the Austen sequels that Aiken wrote, and I think it is a very interesting choice. I personally really enjoy Mansfield Park, but I don't know anyone who would say that it's their favorite Austen. Maybe that's why she started with it, or maybe it was her favorite. Either way, she wrote a compelling story. It was great fun to dive back into the world of the Bertrams. Coming in at number 6 is Sanditon, finished by another lady. I have this version written from 1975 where she completes the story, and I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it. Coming in at number 5. Okay, here we are. Here are my top 5 Jane Austen retellings. Number 5, Pride and Prescience by Carrie Beaveris, or A Truth Universally Acknowledged. This is the first in the Mr. and Mrs. Darcy series. I had so much fun reading this book. In this historical mystery, Carolyn Bingley announces her engagement to an American, shock, at Mr. and Mrs. Darcy's wedding breakfast. The wedding is set within weeks, so the Darcys put off their trip to Pemberley in order to attend the wedding. Unusual things start to happen, and the Bingleys, Darcys, Hursts, and others end up at Netherfield. Beaveris has an obvious love for Austen and Pride and Prejudice. She recreates that world with ease and maintains the characters' personalities. I believe all of their actions and decisions. I especially love the relationship between Elizabeth and Darcy. Even when they disagree, it just feels believable. And there are wonderful elements of Gothic romance in this story that I am a huge sucker for. And so I was just in for all of it. Now I feel like I need to say, because I've been recommending this series pretty heavily, especially during Jane Austen July, and I love it. But just a note, for those of you who maybe have read the first one and are kind of wondering, the first and second in the series have supernatural elements to them, but the rest of the series so far doesn't. So if that's not your thing, push through, because not all of the books are like that. You might think so after reading the first and second, but they're not. So coming in at number 4 is North by Northanger by Carrie Beaveris, or The Shades of Pemberley. This is the 3rd in the series, and it was named the best historical mystery of 2006 by Romantic Times Book Review. This was great. I loved the mystery and the characters and the connections between Northanger Abbey and Pride and Prejudice. I was in for it. I loved it. Number 3 is The Matters at Mansfield by Carrie Beaveris, or The Crawford Affair. This was number 4 in this series, obviously set in the world of Mansfield Park, and again, Loved it. Good mystery. I just love what she does with the characters. It's so good. Coming in at number 2 is Murder at Mansfield Park by Lynn Shepherd. In this ingenious new twist on Mansfield Park, the famously meek Fanny Price, whom Jane Austen's own mother called insipid, has been utterly transformed. She is now a rich heiress who is spoiled, condescending, and generally hated throughout the county. Mary Crawford, on the other hand, is now as good as Fanny is bad, and suffers great indignities at the hands of her vindictive neighbor. It's only after Fanny is murdered on the grounds of Mansfield Park that Mary comes into her own, teaming up with a thief-taker from London to solve the crime. Yes, doesn't that sound amazing? And it was. I loved this. It was a great mystery, and I love how the author took Jane Austen's Mansfield Park and turned it on its head. The changes she made to the original story totally worked for this story. Fantastic. And then coming in at number 1, my favorite Jane Austen retelling is The Other Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. What a delightful book. It was a great story with great characters. I found I did like the story more once it moved past the events of Pride and Prejudice. And that's because it is really hard for anybody to try and redo Jane Austen. So I prefer it when they use her characters and her storylines but move on with their own stories. Those are always better for me, in my opinion. I felt that Hadlow did justice to the characters first introduced in Pride and Prejudice. Although I found Mrs. Bennet in this book a little more angry and mean than I expected, so that was interesting. I love that the Gardners played such a big part in this story. They are some of my favorite characters from Pride and Prejudice. I was surprised by the role of Caroline Bingley in the story, but it worked. I was actually talking out loud to Mary towards the end. You're not actually going to? No! So that's how invested that I was. I was so invested that I was talking out loud to the characters at the end of this book. I stayed up late to finish it, and it was so worth it. So there you have it. That is my ranking of the 32 Jane Austen retellings that I have read. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've read any of these books and if they would be significantly in a different spot on your own ranking list. And I would love to know what is your favorite Jane Austen retelling. And I will see you for another video soon. Bye.